Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with the midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. But we're going to start with this news from Champsy. So thank you, Champsy, for sharing this article from bostonglobe.com that shoppers in Massachusetts dropped $6 million on April 20th this year. And so we love to see another state, especially Massachusetts on the East Coast, sharing record sales and record volume as they legally supply the demand on 420. And so while I don't have a subscription to bostonglobe.com, I just wanted to share the snippet. You can grab the link below if you wanted to try and check it out. As they titled it, on 420, Massachusetts consumers shattered cannabis sales records, with recreational retailers selling more than 200,000 products on the traditional stoner holiday, setting an all-time record. And offhand, I do not remember exactly how many dispensaries Massachusetts has, but I believe it's under 100, and it's far less than they should have based on the population that the state holds. And so for that reason, obviously, the more stores that they could open, the more sales they'd see, but still very happy to see these strong sales and records shattered considering the few dispensaries that they do have open at this time. And so all Illinois sales figures are in for the month of April. And so the good news is that for the year of 2022, April has been the best month yet, selling total items of 3.1 million, in-state resident sales of 90.9 million, out-of-state resident sales of 40.8 million for a total sales for the month of April of 131.7 million. So I do consider that strong, and I'm very happy to see growth, at least from March. However, I think the downside is many were considering more growth because of 420, so they were anticipating stronger sales. And while I would have liked to see that as well, do keep in mind that, Illinois, much like Massachusetts and some other states, unfortunately, they've seen a lot of delays in approving their new dispensaries and licenses that they've awarded to open up. And for that reason, I think from my understanding, Illinois still has only 85 dispensaries open, with another 155 or 185 waiting to be approved, but there are lawsuits that are slowing that down. And so obviously for that reason, if Illinois had been able to approve those and open these new dispensaries, we'd see a lot more sales driven simply due to the fact of opening more stores. But because Illinois has been in this gridlock and been stuck with 85 stores since the opening of 2021, I do still consider this, steady growth heading in the right direction. So hopefully we will see the sales continue to go in that direction as we head into summer, as we've seen that trend last year in 2021. But unfortunately, until the legal matters that are holding up these extra 185 licenses, which I imagine the minority entrepreneurs and small business owners in Illinois would love to see awarded so that they can actually get their businesses up and running sooner than later, until that gridlock is resolved, unfortunately, we will likely see the same thing out of Illinois. However, keep in mind, as Lollapalooza is a big festival that comes around in July, we do typically see sales still jump despite, no new stores opening. So we will be looking out for the same thing heading into the summer, but obviously the best thing we would be able to see is some resolution to those lawsuits to then allow those extra 185 licenses to be awarded. And obviously if the timing of that could come in line with New York or something, that would be huge. Obviously that's just wishful thinking, but wanted to give you guys as much context as possible. So on to this one from New Cannabis Ventures. Just wanted to share Canadian cannabis sales declined 2.9% in February sequentially. Just notice how slow Canada is in reporting their data as opposed to some of the US states. While Stats Canada released February retail sales for the country, with cannabis sales decreasing from January by 2.9% to 336.4 million, while January was revised from 347.2 million to 346.5, and hence why most of my capital is in US MSOs waiting for that flip to switch as opposed to Canadian LPs. But just wanted to show you as well the importance of opening more stores over time to organically drive the growth in your state or province, because Ontario, Canada's most populated province, has a population of 14 million people, so it's somewhat comparable to Illinois with a population of 12 million, despite the fact that Illinois is already driving much more sales than Ontario is, and that's in USD versus Canadian dollars. But Ontario decided in January 2021 they're going to open 120 stores a month, because for 14 million people, they need way more stores to properly supply the demand. So just to give you an idea of when you open more stores, how that growth can organically drive itself over time. February 2021, Ontario saw 86.5 million Canadian dollars in sales. Then in March, we saw 103, quite the jump. Then back down to 97.7, then up to 110, then up to 100, then back down to 107, then 120, 22, then 134 million. And then we sort of saw some flat sales over the last 5 months. But then February 2022, this has been the best record, the record month for Ontario, at least, with 142 million in sales. So just wanted to highlight that the difference a year makes when you've got, say 300 stores versus 1,300 stores, you go from 86 million in sales in the most populated province to 142. And so obviously, the day that we see Illinois and Massachusetts open the floodgates and allow, more dispensaries to come online and properly supply demand will be a very good day in the U.S., and I imagine that is coming. At some point, we don't know, but it is a when, not if scenario. And so, on to some other news. This one comes from the Olympian, which I believe is a Washington-based article, but another article highlighting pot stores. Lawmakers call on Congress to pass Safe Banking Act. Here's what the law would do. And while I've been talking about the Safe Banking Act for literally over a year now, if you're unfamiliar with it, this is a great article that you can read to learn a little bit about it, and you can grab the link below if you'd like. But just wanted to share this as we love to see more awareness being put into mainstream media outlets to get this bill passed. Because obviously, we see another victim that did not have to die because Chuck Schumer could have passed this bill 14 months ago when he stepped into power, but unfortunately he's shown us, based on his actions and not his words, that as of now, and from then until now, he's been working for big pharmaceutical companies who are paying him to delay passing any sort of cannabis reform, as opposed to working for the American people. But it is shameful, but the more of these stories we can highlight and, make people aware of, the more pressure we can build on Congress to pass the Safe Banking Act. As a man shot and killed at Tarzana, Los Angeles Cannabis Dispensary in armed robbery, I wonder how many people need to die before federal government passes safe banking. Is the number 10, 50, 100, and 1,000? I know there's been over 50 robberies I believe alone in Washington just this year, because criminals know where to find cash because the industry is still discriminated against due to the discrepancy between federal and state law. And so while the Dems have until November to pass the Safe Banking Act, and they can pass it in the America Competes Act, it's a possibility. It's also possible that Schumer pulls it from the America Competes Act, much like he did from the NDAA. However, time has passed, the problem has only gotten worse, and so we think that he will keep it in there. However, as we head through uncharted waters, and as the conference process can take a few months over the next few months, plan accordingly for your own situation, but just know that we might see the solution. Otherwise, if we don't, likely the Dems will get voted out of power, and all they'll have to show for it is a lot of blood on their hands. And so just wanted to at least share that Washington State's governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and treasurer sent a letter urging congressional leaders to pass cannabis banking legislation to help stop violent robberies of cannabis businesses, calling it a matter of life and death. And it is. So if the Dems actually care about human lives and saving lives, they'd consider passing this sooner than later. And so just wanted to share, over the last few weeks, I've shared a lot of support from the American Bankers Association and other organizations across the U.S. The only people that don't seem to get it is Congress. But again, we're showing that support is growing across the country and getting stronger week over week. But more importantly, the longer you delay a very important common sense solution to a growing problem, the bigger that problem becomes, and the more you need that common sense solution at some point. So obviously, I've said this a lot, but they're not my original words. They're from people in this industry that have been at this a lot longer than I am, that for that reason, safe is a matter of when, not if. And as a long-term investor, it just requires tough patience and balls of steel, I think, at this point. And so on to this one from Bloomberg. Amid federal delays, can cannabis companies break their slump? And well, I just want to show you what BTIG analyst Camilo says, as he calls it a regulatory recession, given that the stocks still trade at low multiples to their earnings, and many companies have seen growth rates of 60% at the same time that their valuations are falling. If there were any doubts about the demand profile for the category, one only needed to visit an adult use dispensary this past weekend in New Jersey to see hour-long lines of people waiting to buy legal cannabis. Lyons said in an April 6 research note, cannabis, with its many federal and state regulatory restrictions still in place, has been driven into recession by slow-moving policy changes. But he's optimistic, however, that this may end soon, as Lyons cited the prospects for the Safe Banking Act, which would allow financial institutions to offer banking services to legal cannabis businesses without penalties from federal regulators, and President Biden's recent commutation of 75 sentences for individuals serving nonviolent drug offenses. And so the fact that we did see some sort of plus when we've been talking about getting some sort of safe plus, some clemency, and some social justice points that the Dems can give to their voter base. Obviously, since this has happened, we think that it's possible SAFE could end up passing the America Competes Act. But he also mentioned expected upcoming legalizations in a new round of states, including New York, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. But they don't specify, which they probably should, as New York has already legalized cannabis, but they plan to launch their adult use program hopefully by the fall, and that has come from a few statements from different regulators. And so obviously, if that could launch, that would be a big driver of sales, while also Maryland and Pennsylvania will put the question of legalization on the ballot. So that means their adult use programs wouldn't likely launch until 2023, but obviously this is an example of over time, as more states reform their laws, the total addressable market expands. And also just wanted to highlight that I think it's funny that Bloomberg is sharing this speculative April 26 research note as sort of fact or news, because while I do that, I also try to share that, hey, this is just speculation. Don't take this as truth. Obviously, it doesn't seem like Bloomberg is saying, hey, this is just speculation, and here, take it with a grain of salt either. I could be wrong, but found that funny. I wanted to share this from Brady Cobb, just in terms of the Safe Banking Act and pressure building. I just wanted to share this because this comes from a tweet from MJ Stock Trader. AFC Gamma enters into a $60 million senior secured revolving credit facility with commitments from 2 FDIC insured banks. Now, I'm not going to act like I know who AFC Gamma is or who these 2 FDIC insured banks, but I trust Brody Cobb as he's been in this industry lobbying since 2014, and he's a long-time voice in the space. And he just shares his perspective, which I think is interesting, worth sharing, as 2 FDIC banks funding one of the largest debt providers for U.S. cannabis against the backdrop of a renewed bipartisan call for SAFE to be included in the competes. He says, I believe in coincidences. I've just never seen one. So take from that what you will, but it does seem ironic that while SAFE is being pushed for in the America Competes Act, some banks might be loosening their regulations towards cannabis, which might be a good sign. But also just wanted to share this from Todd Harrison. It's worth noting again that functional banking and non-onerous tax codes will benefit social justice and small businesses much more than the large operators. And so small business operators and minority entrepreneurs, they would be the ones that would benefit the most from SAFE passing. And so Schumer, again, delaying that is really just screwing those that actually voted for him. But nonetheless, yes, the big boys would save money, but the emerging entrants won't get out of the gate in the current landscape. So just to share that off of this tweet from Sammy J, highlighting again the impact of 280E, which was featured in Ben Kovler's letter to shareholders. So you can pause to read a bit more snippet, but just to highlight that cannabis companies, basically Green Thumb is paying $491.9 million in taxes, where any other non-cannabis equivalent would just be paying $205. So I don't know about you, but that is discrimination at its finest, and that's why this double standard needs to end at some point. So I wanted to share some more notes from Todd Harrison. This one from Shooter McGinley on U.S. cannabis. So again, this is from an investment firm. It is speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, but you can take it in and compare it to what you already know to make any decisions you might want to make. And so this comes from Needham, April 2022 monthly valuation update. And while difficult to swallow, cannabis equity performance in April was the single worst in a month since March 2022. But the fact is, since March 2020, but the fact is, since March 2020, these companies have only gotten bigger, only opened more stores, and only increased their sales. And so take from that what you will. Well, at the same time, just a bit more information here, so you can pause to read if you'd like. Well, we've got some other charts from Shooter McGinley on U.S. cannabis. These ones from Needham & Co. as well. And so Needham, U.S. cannabis industry revenue likely growing from 2021 to 2026. And as more states reform their laws, these numbers will likely increase. So I wanted to share that one. Then we've got U.S. quarterly cannabis revenue. Despite improvement in the sales trends later in the quarter, overall industry sales were likely down 2% in first quarter of 2022. But they don't add in here that is likely due to Croptober, which is what we're learning is the seasonal effect of organized crime that harvests a lot of cannabis over the summer in California, and then they harvest in the fall, and then from the fall to January or February, they ship that cheap cannabis across the country and try to undercut the legal market. So that is a reality. That is something that we're learning and that these MSOs are learning about and dealing with as well. But that's likely why we've seen this sort of stagnation after steady growth over time. And then also just wanted to share legal growth markets and potential illicit market degradation. Obviously, the sooner more states reform their laws, the sooner we get more legal sales. And so obviously that's a good thing. I don't know why politicians don't see this yet and why they're not running on that, but hopefully they will see the light sooner than later. And just to compare North American industry valuation and sales growths to MSOs, they are an industry outlier. And so while I've shared this in the past, and it does seem that red dot was further out to the right, had New Jersey launched earlier, had New York launched earlier, they would still be out here. But for the reason that those states likely were delayed and did not launch, this pulls them back a little bit. But obviously, if we in the future were to get New York and then Pennsylvania and Maryland or a few other states just to go boom, 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 launch their programs, that would account for some growth. And obviously, population is a big driver of that. And obviously the amount of dispensaries they open up. But nonetheless, I just don't see many industries with this much growth potential going forward, especially over the remaining decade, with many states likely to reform their laws over time. And so lastly, wanted to share this one from Roth on U.S. cannabis from Todd Harrison. So thank you for sharing this one, Todd, as their weekly rehash covers an update on state legalization momentum. And so you can pause to read if you'd like to see what Roth has to say on U.S. cannabis. And so on to some MSOs. Trulieve Cannabis Corp to hold their first quarter 2022 results conference call on May 12th, 2022. And so that'll be coming maybe not next week, but the week after, but we'll hold their call on Thursday, May 12th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time following the release of its first quarter 2022 financial results. And so today, Green Thumb will be publishing theirs, I think, after markets around 5 p.m. And so that'll be the first of Q1 for the MSOs coming out. So we'll get to see how these companies have treaded through these difficult times with Croptober and the unexpected delays of New Jersey, which obviously had that launch sooner than later would have helped a lot of MSOs in that state see a bit more growth. But nonetheless, I think if the companies can keep their costs down and keep their revenues relatively steady, I think that will set them up well for Q2 and Q3 going forward with no Croptober, and then hopefully summer spending back as usual. And so while Trulieve also acquires Greenhouse Wellness in West Virginia, expanding their footprint there, this is an older one, but I did want to share it as they announced on the 27th of April the closing of the acquisition of Greenhouse Wellness West Virginia Dispensaries, holder of a West Virginia dispensary permit, giving them another permit in that state, and it's an under-competitive state where not many other MSOs are in there, while Trulieve paid an immaterial amount of cash consideration for the transactions. We don't know how much they paid for it, but according to Kim Rivers, CEO of Trulieve, the acquisition broadens our ever-expanding presence in West Virginia, said Kim. We now have cultivation, processing, and 10 dispensary permits in the state. Trulieve is committed to investing in communities where we operate and will serve West Virginia patients by offering expanded access to high-quality products and providing exceptional customer experiences. So good job, Trulieve, continuing to expand in the lesser competitive states, while Curaleaf announces that their Select brands expands CBD offerings with launch of Select CBD Bites. So they announced today that they're available across the U.S. both in-store and online. Select's latest offerings is infused with purified, broad-spectrum hemp to provide targeted wellness benefits without the psychoactive effects of THC. And so they offer Select Snooze Bites, Select Recovery Bites, and Select Chill Bites. And so you can pause to read for more information on that. But good to see Select expanding their products and getting that into more stores across the country to consumers, while Verano receives permission to file U.S. GAAP financials on SEDAR and withdraws the MCTO application. And as someone that's not trained in finance, I don't know exactly what this means, but I did just want to share the news, as it seems like they've been able to file their newly adjusted financials as they were IFRS before, and now they've adjusted them to U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. Seems like they've just gotten permission to post these online on SEDAR. So you can get them online if you'd wish. And for that reason, the company's withdrawn its application for management cease trade order, previously disclosed in the company's April 26th, 2022 press release. And so if you know more about this, and if I'm missing something big that this means that I've not relayed, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, just wanted to share this as this is news from Verano. While also did want to share this from MJ Stock Trader, as again, I haven't been able to go through their earnings yet just because I've been busy with work. But one thing I did want to highlight that not ideal for me, and while I do own shares of Goodness Growth that will convert to Verano, I still just not so happy seeing their goodwill and intangibles have ballooned to $1.7 billion from all the M&A. And that is obviously a side effect of a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And so hopefully if some of the M&A does, bring the return on investment that they were anticipating, some of their revenues can eat into this, so they won't have to write too much of this off. But a few notes here from MJ Stock Trader. Verano's 2021 annual financials were uploaded to SEDAR, and a few notes. Deferred taxes went from $310 million in Q3 to $263 million in Q4, and then current liabilities almost 2x current assets due to M&A money owed. And so they have debt available, so they can pay that off, but it's not ideal. And again, main thing for me, I just don't like to see that. While I will still hold my shares in the near term, because I do think Verano is still going to be a successful MSO, just wanted to point that out as that's not as ideal. And some of the other MSOs just do not have that much goodwill outstanding. And so I wanted to share this press release from Green Thumb, as Green Thumb Industries announces their internet availability of proxy materials for its 2022 meeting of shareholders. And so they announced the internet availability of its materials for the annual general shareholder meeting pursuant to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's notice and access rules and applicable Canadian securities. The company also announced the resignation of Swati Mialavapu, sorry for butchering that name, Swati, although you're not going to be watching this, from its board of directors effective April 20th, 2022. And so interesting, they don't put that in the title, but they sneakily add this down here. I'm sure that man maybe had an opportunity elsewhere, and that's likely why he left, because he thought the opportunity elsewhere was better. I don't know, not going to speculate into this, but just wanted to share that as well. However, if you wanted to attend the internet version of Green Thumb's 2022 meeting for shareholders, all the links are available here. You can grab that below. And also just wanted to share this from Pablo at US Cannabis, Pablo at Cantor Fitzgerald, but his take on GTI. And so this actually came out yesterday, May 2nd, 2 days ago. But so this is before Green Thumb releases their earnings, and so I haven't even been able to look at those either. But if you're interested in what an investment analyst has to say about Green Thumb before the earnings come out, you can pause to read if you'd like to learn more about Green Thumb. And so also wanted to jump over to this one from Jack Invest. So thank you, Jack, for doing this, putting this together. Basically a bit of napkin math from him. So take this with a grain of salt, but he said, completed my high-level analysis of the Cresco Labs and Columbia Care merger for what the combined Cresco Labs will look like. Assumptions by year-end included in the thread. Special thank you to Cashflow Free, where I pulled the 21 to 2023 numbers and projections for these separate companies. So again, take this as speculation, but thank you, Jack Invest, for just doing these rough numbers. And so obviously, if the deal does go through, I think this will look very, very good, not just for 2022 numbers, but 2023 numbers and beyond. So obviously, best case scenario, no unexpected surprises come about. Consolidated revenue could look as good as 1.8 billion by 2023 next year for the full year, which would be more than, roughly less than double, but a good number for the new combined entity. But then 2024, 2.6 billion, 2025, 3.3 billion, with some consolidated EBITDA or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, and consolidated net income. So again, though, take this with a grain of salt as they are estimates, but just to show you what else he has, his assumptions, 2023, and a lot of this would be that New York launches on time and there are no other delays, and also obviously the deal goes through, but so you can read assumption 2, 3, 4, and then his conclusion. So you can pause to read otherwise, so you don't have to grab the link below. Just wanted to share that, so thank you, Jack, for providing this. Well, I just wanted to share this because not all MSOs are as lucky as New York court rules a $600 million lawsuit against a cannabis producer can proceed. Yikes. A $6 million lawsuit against multi-state cannabis operator Acreage Holdings, and others will move forward after a New York State Supreme Court ruling against a defendant's motion to dismiss. And so just to add a bit of context, the case could also complicate a plan for Canopy Growth of Ontario, Canada to acquire Acreage, a deal valued at around $843 million, according to the Motley Fool, which covers the financial industry. Well, Canopy is also named as a defendant in the suit, and so I imagine Acreage Holdings and others does include these entities down here. And so obviously this is still early, it's still speculation, and I do not know what this means for Acreage Holdings, but just goes to show that not all companies are created equal, and why it's best to do as much research as you possibly can and to try and watch companies over time before you even invest in them, just so that you have an understanding of them and know that they might not be up to some shady shit in the background. And so wanted to share this one from BMC Psychiatry, though, another study, as there was an investigation of cannabis use for insomnia and depression and anxiety in a naturalistic sample, this one from April 28th, 2022, and conclusions in terms of perceptions. Individuals with depression, anxiety, and both conditions who use cannabis for insomnia report significant improvements, not just improvements, significant improvements in symptom severity after cannabis use. And so you can get more technical info in the results here if you wanted to pause to read. But obviously the current study highlights the need for placebo-controlled trials investigating symptom improvement and the safety of cannabinoids for sleep in individuals with mood and anxiety. Well, this sounds great. Unfortunately, it's more of the same, and until we deschedule the cannabis plant, we're just going to get more and more studies that say cannabis has amazing potential or it shows promising results. However, we need more studies to find out what we already know, that cannabis is the best non-addictive alternative medicine to opioids, and that if cannabis was descheduled, big pharmaceutical companies don't want that because it would take a massive chunk out of their market share. So that's the main reason cannabis is and will likely stay a Schedule 1 for a bit longer, but I do think we're getting to that tipping point. I sure hope we are. Well, lastly, this one comes from NORML, Keep Safe Banking in the America Competes Act. And this is just a great summary write-up of where we sit today, and what actually matters is with SAFE in the America Competes Act as it heads into the conference process. This means that the fate of this legislation and of safe banking will ultimately be decided in the conference committee when leaders from both chambers and from both parties negotiate on finalizing the bill's language before being advanced to the president's desk. And so the Safe Banking Act was passed in the House's final version of the America Competes Act, but it was not passed in the final version of the Senate. However, in order to pass this bill and get it signed by the president, you need one bill that is the same that both the House and Senate can agree on. And so that's why we head into this negotiation process. And while Chuck Schumer did pull the Safe Banking Act out of the NDAA, which is a bill it was added into in December, again, since time has gone on, the problem has only gotten bigger. And for that reason, we would be led to believe that Schumer might keep it in here. That doesn't have to be the case, but because it is in the House version, we still have a shot. So that is why you need to contact your members of Congress today and urge them to pass the America Competes Act out of committee with the safe banking provisions included, as cannabis businesses and their customers need this legislative relief now. And so I would encourage you, if you can, just enter your name and a bit of info and just say why you support Safe Banking Act, because it'll get $25 billion in cash off the streets. It'll save a lot of lives, and minority entrepreneurs and small business owners need it in order to operate sustainably in this industry over time. And so it does include postal code, so I'm going to write one up after I finish this video, but nonetheless, if you can do that, that would be great, because obviously the more pressure we can put on, the more likely we can actually make this a reality sooner than later. So lastly, just wanted to share this updated US Canna comp sheet as of May 1st, 2022 by at Cashflow Free. Just wanted to share that Cashflow Free is the same reference that I believe Jack used to make these projections as well. So again, not fact. They can change, but take this as a grain of salt. But these are projections. And so we've got the tier 1 MSOs, tier 2 MSOs, tier 3, and tier 4. So obviously you go down the tiers, the more risky these companies are. But you can go across the board. You can look at their share price as of May 1st. You can look at their fully diluted shares outstanding, their market cap, their net debt, their enterprise value, all in one place, their stores, how many they've opened versus licenses that they have that they can't open, their fact set sales estimates in the millions from 2020 to 2023 and their compounded annual growth rate, their EBITDA estimates from 2020 to 2023, their EBITDA margins from 2020 to 2023, their earnings per share under, I guess, generally accepted accounting principles from 2021 to 2023, their enterprise value divided by sales, their enterprise value divided by EBITDA, and their price to earnings ratio. So all this amazing information right here, folks. You can grab the link below if you wanted to dive in and find which companies are, the best bang for their buck at current valuations. And so lastly, before we go, I just wanted to share this one from Sayshu Metacharla, who's provided some great rough breakdowns on some companies and their earnings, and he's been able to shed some light when I haven't been able. So thank you, Sayshu. And with this, he provides his first quarter 2022 cannabis pre-earnings thoughts. And so just going to leave this with you if you're interested, as MSOs are going to be releasing their earnings. Now, because I'm working, I just don't have as much time to do the individual MSO videos. And while I do plan to do those at some point, I just likely won't be able to pump them out on Friday, but I'll try and do my best to get them done. But nonetheless, I just want to leave you off with this as he shares a bunch of snippets. So you can pause to read 1, 2, and 3 here. Then you can pause to read 4, 5, 6, 7. Then you can pause to read 8, 9, 10. And then you can pause to read from 10 to the end. If you want to just get a bit more information on what we can expect in the Q1 earnings from these MSOs based on what we've learned over the last few months, again, with Croptober, delays and all that. But also I do think that if these earnings can stay steady, if they can cut costs and they can keep their revenues at least the same, that sets them up very well for the next quarters into the year. And again, as total addressable markets expand, as New Jersey is now online, as New Mexico has come online, as Connecticut plans to come online, and New York plans to come online, it's going to be more sales for the MSOs with a footprint in these states. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.